All right, this is prompt 2, the reflective teacher. Reflection as an educator, this means to me that I take time to look back on a lesson and see how I can be a better educator. It enables me, when I reflect on a lesson, to see what worked, what didn't work, and what my students learned from the lesson. I can use the data I collect from formal and summative assessments to see what my students got from the lesson and what I can do to improve on it. I've also found that recording a lesson is a beneficial method for me to use for reflection. Don't really like to be videotaped, but I've noticed through using that during the graduate program that sometimes I talk too fast when I'm teaching, or I don't give the students enough time to answer. Using this method of reflective teaching helps me to become a better educator. Reflective teaching allows the teacher to think over teaching practices, make changes for improved learning, and analyze what was taught. At the end of a lesson or at the end of the day, even though you might be tired and it might be hard to do, but teachers should take the time to reflect on the lessons they've taught, and this can help them to become a better educator. How do my peers help me become a better teacher? I teach at a small school. There's only one classroom per grade level, so I don't have the feedback from another second grade teacher, but I'm able to meet with teachers in the grades below me or above me. And meeting with them helps me to see what my students are coming to me with, their prior knowledge, to see what they learned in first grade. And it also lets me see, by talking to the third grade teacher, what I need to have my second grade students ready for her when she gets them in the fall. I'm also able to, throughout the school year, observe my peers. We're very welcome and open to go into other classrooms. I can see strategies and methods that they're using that I could use in my own classroom. It's beneficial to go into another room and see, like, how are they using behavior management, what's working for them, what's not working. Also get new lesson ideas. Just even though if I'm looking at a different grade level, I can find ways to apply that to my current grade level. The influence of prior knowledge and student experience are very important in lesson planning. I need to use my prior knowledge to plan lessons. If I don't know a subject area, then I need to find ways to advance my knowledge about it before I start to teach it. Nothing's more humbling than a second grader correcting you for something you said that was wrong. So it's good to always know what you are teaching. I need to use my prior knowledge also to know the needs of my students. I need to make engaging lessons and understand the information and any misconceptions before I begin teaching the lesson. My own experience as a student taught me that good teachers don't just teach. They find ways to get to know their students and form a bond with them. I had several teachers during my school years that took the time to get to know me and how I learned best. I actually had a college algebra teacher who, the way that she taught me really met my needs, and everything finally clicked. This is the kind of teacher I strive to be, one that puts forth extra effort for their students. I've also had some teachers that only taught in direct instruction. They taught from the book. There was nothing different than that. And I can vividly remember being in the back of a fifth grade classroom crying because I didn't understand fractions. And I really feel like now, if I'd had some kind of tactile instruction with that, like something manipulative to feel or touch, then I probably would have understood the lesson better. I never want my students to be like that, to be overwhelmed and frustrated over a lesson that I'm teaching. For the previous taught lesson, I chose the Georgia Standard of learning about the regions of Georgia. I've been teaching about the regions of Georgia for the last 5 years. When I first started teaching this lesson, I only used direct instruction. I used a periodical called Georgia Studies Weekly, provided by my school. It was boring. It was tedious. It was just a bunch of maps and pictures. I didn't use any other strategies for integration. The students just completed the little periodical, and that was it. When I started my master's program, I began to add in graphic organizers and had them create a brochure and a test. As I reflect on this lesson, I don't feel that I was meeting the needs of all my students, and I was just teaching to the middle learner in the classroom. The goals for the lesson were to identify the different features of the regions of Georgia, to compare and contrast the 5 regions, and to use research to write about a region of Georgia. The teaching strategy that I used in this previous lesson was direct instruction. I was able to give the material, they learned the material, but it was not at a higher level. There was no rigor and no engagement. The changes I would make are to use multiple teaching strategies and to incorporate writing into the lesson and to use technology. This is a video of me, although it's mainly direct instruction with the class. I've got them using technology, but this first part of this lesson leads to us breaking into groups to start our projects. The students were allowed to choose whether they wanted to make, they could choose one of the 5 regions. They could choose to either make a brochure, they could make a diorama, they could write a report, or they could make a Google Slides presentation. They all had to have different categories that were in it. They had to have different features in it, and all this was told to them before they chose what project they wanted to do. Hope you enjoy the video. Lesson plans. I've included the lesson plan for my first lesson that I did and the revised lesson plan. Here are some artifacts from my revised lesson. I've got the class graphic organizer that we all did together. This is a student doing individual research. Here are some students that were grouped together by the region they chose, working collaboratively. This is a picture of a diorama of one of the Georgia regions. This is a Google slide presentation one of my students did on the Blue Ridge region. You can click the link to watch that or to see that. And at the end of the revised lesson unit, we took a field trip to Rock City to visit a different region in Georgia. We live in the Valley and Ridge region. We went to go visit the Appalachian Plateau region to see the differences. The success of this lesson, I definitely feel that it was more successful than the last 4 years I taught it. It was more engaging. There was more rigor. They were able to use technology. The lesson took place over 2 weeks. We learned each of the individual regions, and at the end of the unit, they were able to create a project on their region. I did have one student who chose to write a paper. She's one of the highest level learners in my classroom, and I knew that when I gave these options that she would choose that option. It was interesting to me that I was, in thinking about my students, I knew I kind of had in my head which ones were going to choose which way to do their project, and it was interesting to see how that did fall out. Cultural diversity and community engagement. We learned about each region. We discussed the people who live and work in that region and the resources that they have. We learned about farmers and the Coastal Plain region, and that's where most of our farming comes from in the state of Georgia. For the community outreach, we had parents who came to on the field trip with us, and they were able to engage the students in learning and to help them find different things that we had talked about in our lessons. Student engagement, the first lesson I did, the student engagement was very low. They listened to my instructions, they did what they were supposed to do, but there was no engagement. In my revised lesson, the students were really a part of the learning experience. They were engaged, they had technology, they did research, they planned how they were going to present. They worked individually and in cooperative groups. In the future, I will use project-based and inquiry-based learning when teaching about the Georgia regions. And I feel like this is one that my students will remember in the future. The overall class learning experience was positive. Most of my students enjoyed the lesson unit. One of my lower level students really actually shut down just because it was a little overwhelming, and I had to go and break down more of the project for that student. I had one student who was overwhelmed by the noise, and again, I was able to work with him one-on-one. The lower level student that I had would benefit from being paired with another student, and she would have benefited from asking peer questions and information. After reviewing the work samples, I feel that this lesson was inclusive and it contained small group work, independent work, student choice, and hands-on activities. To make it more integrated, I could have set up centers in the room that represented each of the regions of Georgia, and that could have helped maybe with my tactile learner. My graduate experience reflection, I really have been very pleased with what I've done at the graduate level. It's definitely made me become a better teacher. I've gained so much knowledge, and I've been able to implement that into the curriculum and standards that I use every day. One of the classes that helped me was classroom management. I really feel like that class helped me to reorganize my classroom, set up more routines and procedures that we use on a daily basis. I also enjoyed the science methods and materials class. It was very engaging. It was very effective. I love the resources we had in that class, and it really truly made me want to teach more science to my students. I think I would have benefited from a class on technology before beginning my graduate journey. I graduated from college over 20 years ago, so a lot's changed, and that sometimes slowed me down as far as getting work turned in and just the frustration level. So definitely having that would have helped me and enhanced my lessons. Thank you very much.